everyone, in today's video I'm going to teach you how I make one of my twiddle muffs. We do have a lot going on the front here. We have a sun, a couple clouds, and then as requested by Anna in my twiddle muff collection, she wanted me to show the pom-pom border, so I did do that here. And then at the back there's even more going on. She asked me to also show the tentacles, which I did do, and it made it look like grass. We have a basket with a couple apples, we have a red and green apple, and this is pom-poms. So we also have our tree with some mini green apples and then more clouds. Now this does take a long time to make. It took me over 6 hours to film, not including all of the other stuff I had to do. So this is going to be a 3-part video. So for part 1 we are going to be working with the base and then the cloud and our pom-pom border, and then for the other 2 parts I will probably release those videos the upcoming Saturday. I'll try to release them really close together in case you do plan to do this within a week, but it does take a while to get everything together. So if you're interested in making one of these twiddle muffs, I'll let you know what you'll need for this entire twiddle muff, and then you'll repeat what you'll need in each part of the video. I'll be using my crochet hook in the size 5mm. For the base of your twiddle muff, you can choose to use any color you like, but typically for twiddle muffs you use scrap pieces of yarn, so that's what I'm going to be using. I have all of them in this cute little unicorn bowl. My friend bought me this years ago for my birthday, and you're actually just supposed to put 1 skein of yarn in here and then go through this area, and it's just going to help keep your yarn straight, but I just keep all of my scrap pieces of yarn. So today I'm just going to be using all of these random colors. Also, this is optional, but I will be using these pom-poms. I don't have all red, so that's why I'm going to be using green, but we're going to be making some apples. And then for the other pieces of yarn, I'll be using some yellow yarn for a sun. I'm going to use some pink yarn for our pom-pom border. I have some of this Bernat baby yarn, and I'm going to use this for the clouds. I didn't have a different kind of blue, so I'm just going to use this one. Lastly, I do have some green yarn for the tree and some grass. The brown is going to be for the tree base. Also, I would probably go with a different color brown, but this is one of the scrap pieces I'm just going to use so I can get rid of it. I almost forgot to mention, but I'm planning on making a basket as well. So I'm just going to be using this color yarn because there's a little bit left, and I think this would be the perfect amount. I'll also be using green felt for the leaf of our apples. Lastly, you will need a glue gun, scissors, threading needle, and a stitch marker. To create our twiddle muff base, we're going to take our first color of yarn and create a slip knot. So I like to take my yarn and fold it in half like this, and then I'm going to twist it. Now you can see this is the shorter piece. I'm going to go inside the circle and just grab this yarn and pull it straight through. Now we can just take our hook and insert it inside the circle and pull. So now you just need to create a chain, so you're just going to yarn over and pull through. Now I don't know how many I'm going to chain yet because every time I make a twiddle muff it's just based off of preference, so let me just continue doing this until I have it long enough, and I'll let you know how many I chained. I ended up doing a chain of 61, and you can choose to do something larger or smaller if you like, but remember that you will be closing it this way with a slip stitch. And you want to be able to put your hands through the circle, so just make sure that whatever kind of yarn you're using, it might be a little bit smaller or bigger, but mine is a chain of 61. So now we're going to close this up. So let me just put my hook back into my yarn. Now we are going to be closing this with a slip stitch, so let me grab the other side, and we're going to go straight into that first knot there. So let me just take my hook and go into this stitch. We're just going to take our yarn and pull it straight through. So this is called oh my god, what is this called? That was called a slip stitch, and now we can move on to row 2. So for row 2, I'm going to be working with a half double crochet. So what I'm going to first do is chain 1. And then I'm going to do a half double crochet into the same stitch where I did the slip stitch. So that means I'm just going to yarn over, put my hook through the stitch, grab some of this yarn. I have 3 loops. Now I'm going to yarn over one more time and pull through all 3. So I'm going to do that the entire way through until I end up back at my last stitch. I now have 61 stitches, so I'm just going to slip stitch into my first stitch, and remember the chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we're not going into this. We're going to slip stitch right into this first stitch. So I'm just inserting my hook and pulling it straight through. So if you want to continue with the yellow, you just have to do the same thing where you'll chain one and then you'll half double crochet into that same stitch. But I'm going to show you how to color change. So it's actually really simple. All you have to do is cut off your excess piece of yarn, and then what I like to do to secure it is just to insert this piece of yarn through this loop. So I'm just going to put it in and tighten it up, and now I'm going to attach my second color. To attach my second color, you can see this is where I left off when I tightened the loop, so I'm just going into the stitch right next to that. I'm inserting my hook, and then I'm going to take my new yarn and I'm just going to tie a knot. So it's really simple. Also, because this is a twiddle muff, we usually just leave the excess piece of yarn in the inside. We don't even cut that off because it gives patients or whoever you're giving it to something to play with on the inside. So now we're just going to insert it back into the stitch, grab some of this yarn, and then you want to chain one. And the same thing, we're just going to do a half double crochet. So I just yarn over, go into the stitch. We have 3 loops, well, if you can see it. Yarn over again and pull through all 3. So this next yarn I'm working with is a little bit, it's hard, well, it frays easier, but I'm just going to continue doing a half double crochet until I reach the end so I can slip stitch to close it off. I currently have 61 stitches, and you can see we have this empty spot right here. You actually are not going to slip into that. You want to slip stitch into your first stitch. So this is the chain 1, and it is hard to see because of the yarn that I used, but you're going to go to the one on top where the stitch is, and then you just slip stitch. And this time I think I want to keep with the brown, so I am going to chain 1, and then I'm going to do a half double crochet into that same stitch. So there's my chain 1, which is within that stitch, and then I'm going there to do the half double crochet. So now I'll continue with this row until I make it all the way back to this side. And remember, this is where the empty spot is, so you don't have to stitch into that. I'm back with my 61 stitches and I'm ready to close this off. So remember that you don't stitch into this right here. This is not a stitch. This is what happens when you create your slip stitch, and then this right here is the chain 1. So I'm not sure if you can see, it's really small, but that's the chain 1, and then on top of it is where our stitch is. So that's what I want to slip stitch into. So let me go straight into that, and I'm going to pull straight through, and that is the end of my 3rd round. So from this point on, you can pause this video because in the next couple clips I will be moving on to the pom-pom, because basically from here on out all you have to do is continue working with whatever yarn you want to and create the base of your twiddle muff. You want to make it, well, you can make it as long as you want or short as you want, but usually I will make it up to like, well, it will fit into my arm right here, so it'll be like this much, but it's pretty short. So if you want to make yours longer, you can make yours longer. I'm back with the base of one of my twiddle muffs, and as you can tell, it isn't the same one as the one I was working on earlier in this video, because this is the one I made yesterday, and I did try to film this before, but it turned out to be a mess, so I had to delete all of that footage and I started over. So with this guy, as you can see, I didn't keep track of my stitches because honestly, when I make a twiddle muff, I'm always like watching TV or doing something else while crocheting, so I don't keep count. Now, if you want yours to be like extremely straight and perfect, keep count of your stitches and you'll totally be fine. But when you do your chain, like I did my chain of 61 here, it will be a little bit tighter at the top than when you go down. It will curve just a little bit, but you can just pull it out a bit and it will straighten it up. But that's just one of the things if you don't count your stitches. Honestly, I don't think it's a big deal unless I guess you're selling it, but I don't sell mine. So yeah, just wanted to mention that in case you find that it goes in and out. It's probably because you don't have the right amount of stitches. So now I want to move on to the pom-pom, and because this one is shorter, I'm going to work on the bottom later. I'm going to show you how to do the pom-pom on the top of this. If you watched my twiddle muff collection, you did see that I did do a pom-pom border on one of the muffs, and I did mention that it wasn't one of my favorites, but Anna commented asking if I can show that, so I will show that in this video. But I do want to mention that I'm not the best at this. So what we first want to do is actually, you can see this is the front of my twiddle muff, and I can tell because when I turn it around you can see the seam. So you will have a seam with this, but again, it's not a big deal. So what we first want to do is take the yarn you want to make the pom-pom with, and earlier in this video I did did mention I'm going to be using a pink yarn, but I'll show you that later on. I'm going to start with this yellow. So with the yellow, you want to find any stitch, you can start anywhere, and just insert your yarn or your hook and then grab some yarn through so we can attach it. And then we're just going to tie it with a knot. Once you tied your knot, let's make a chain of 6. So I'm just taking this yarn and pulling it through, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through the loop. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now I'm just going to turn it so I can show you. But for this part, you will be counting from where your hook is. So you want to go into the 3rd chain. So this is the first one closest to the hook, 2nd, and then 3rd. We're going to be doing a double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. So I'm going to yarn over, I'm going into the chain, the 3rd one, and I'm doing my double crochet. So I have 3 loops. I'm going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, and then I'm going to yarn over again and pull through the last 2. So you need to do it 3 times. So that was 1. I needed to do it 2 more times. So yarn over, go through the loop, the same one. We have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, and then pull through the last 2. So I'll do that one more time into that same stitch or the same chain from the hook. Okay, so that is our first little bobble. Now we have to chain 3. So we're going to yarn over, pull through once, twice, and my 3rd time. So next we have to do the same thing, but we're going to do it into this stitch right here. This is where you kind of first started. It's not the chain of where you started, but where you ended, I guess, on the bobble. So I'm going to do my 3 double crochets into this chain, or the stitch I mean, yarn over, pull through the first 2, and then pull through the last 2. So I'm going to do that 2 more times so we can equal up to a total of 3. Okay, so you can see we have our bobble now. So we just want to fold it in half, and you're going to slip stitch back into the first chain of where you started this first bobble. So which means it's this big one right here. It's kind of open already. We want to slip stitch. And then now you can see it's still fully open. So what I like to do is just fold it again. It's hard to show the bobble. And then now you can see that I have it folded. You want to just slip stitch to close this up, because if I didn't, it would still be open. So I'm just going to find any stitch at the top. This one here. Now I went through my first bobble. Now I'm going into my second one to close it. And then just slip stitch. So that means I'm just pulling it all the way through. And now I'm going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and now I have to determine where I want to place this. So I think I want to 2, 3. I'm going to put it into the 4th stitch. So that's where I'm going to separate it. And I'm doing this with a single crochet. So let me just take that out again. A single crochet, we just want to go into the stitch, take some yarn through. We have 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through both. So now I'm just going to take this out. Here is our first bobble. Now it is a little bit difficult the first time you do it, but I do like the way it looks. I just hated the first time I tried it because it would stay open, so that's why I added the slip stitch. Now when I placed my chain of 3 on this side into this stitch, I just determined based on, because I like it, you know, with into the 4th stitch, but you can do it into like the 5th or, you know, the 3rd, depending on how far apart you want this to hang down. So I did not count, you know, how many it would take for it to be fully even for it to end up on this side. So just take into consideration that I did not count the spaces apart. I just put it where I felt like it. So if it ends up a little bit weird here, I will let you know how it looks. So let me continue to show you that one more time, and then I'll show you the ending. Moving on with our next pom-pom, let me demonstrate this one more time. Hopefully I can make this more clear. But so we started off, well, we ended off here at our single crochet. So now I'm going to chain 6. So I just yarn over my hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we're going to do a double crochet 3 times into the 3rd chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, yarn over, go into that chain, We have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Okay, now I need to do that 2 more times into that same chain. Okay, next I'm going to chain 3 from where I'm at. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do a double crochet into this stitch right here. So this is basically where you ended off in your first bobble. So that was 1 double crochet. We'll do that 2 more times. So that was 2, and then 3. Okay, now I like to fold it in half. So this is the back side. It naturally will curve to the back. Okay, now we're going to slip stitch into the chain we've been working with on this first bobble. So you can already see it because it'll have like this big opening. So just slip stitch into that. And then now that it's folded like this, like a sandwich kind of, you're just going to slip stitch into the other side of it so we can close the bobble. So let me just show you the first piece. So this is the front piece that I'm going into. Any stitch closest to the top, and then you want to go into the stitch on the back of it. Take some yarn and pull it all the way through. Now we can chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then remember, I placed mine 4 stitches apart. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're doing a single crochet. So I'm just inserting my hook into that stitch, pulling this yarn through. We have 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And that is the pom-pom. So I'm going to continue doing that around my entire border, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like. Okay guys, I made it back all the way to the other side of my pom-pom border, and it actually worked out perfectly. So I'm at my last pom-pom right now, so this guy right here, and as you can see I have this much space left. So all I'm gonna do is actually just single crochet back closest to my first pom-pom, and then I'm going to end this off by just cutting the yarn, and we're gonna close it off the same way we close off basically the twiddle muff. So we just cut it off, and then we take the yarn, insert it into the loop, and tighten it up. Now you can just find some yarn pieces that's on the inside and just tie it together to make it a little bit more secure. But that is the border with a pom-pom. So you can add it to the bottom as well, and I actually have already done that. Let me show you my other twiddle muff. Here's my twiddle muff with the pink pom-pom border. You can see I have it at the top and the bottom as well. You don't have to add it to both borders, but I like the look of it on both sides. And I do want to show you the other items I have. So if you're wondering why I have all these different twiddle muffs, it's because it will take me forever to film the video. If I try to do one muff in one day, it would take me probably like 24 hours just to film it, because filming this portion plus this, it already takes over like 2 hours. So this base was done yesterday, and then this was done this morning. So that is the reason why I do have like different colors. But for the rest of this video, I will be working with this twiddle muff because the base is done and the border is done. The last thing I'll show you how to do in part 1 is going to be the clouds. Now I did make my clouds with the Bernat baby yarn, but I'm not going to demonstrate it with this yarn because it's going to be difficult to see the stitches. So I will show you with my yellow yarn how to make it, but these are the pre-made ones I'll be using for my muff. And then with the yellow yarn, again, I'm showing you it with this yarn because it's going to be easier to see, and also I don't have any other blue yarn right now, so that's why I'm using this one. So what we first want to do is create a slip knot. So we've already done this before with the twiddle muff. We just want to take our yarn and hold it in half. We're going to twist it, and then we're going to grab this yarn and pull it through the circle. Now I'm going to do a chain of 12. So that's 1, 2, 3. Before we start this, I do want to mention that this is a freehand cloud. I don't follow a tutorial, or this is not even my own pattern. I'm just doing what I feel like it will look nice. So for this, I'm going to start off with I feel like I want to do a half double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over my hook, and I'm going into the second chain from my hook, so not the one closest. It's going to be this guy right here, and a half double crochet is what we actually been working with. So all you have to do is yarn over and pull through all 3. So now, because I want the cloud to go a little bit higher, I'm actually going to do a double crochet into that same stitch. So yarn over, going into the same stitch. We have 3 loops. This time we're only going through the first 2, and then now the second 2. Okay, so next we want to move on to the stitch right after that. So we're going to do a double crochet to that stitch. Now I think I'm going to do another double crochet into that same stitch. So yarn over, same stitch, do the same thing. We're going to go through the first 2 and then the last 2. Okay, now we're going to move on to the stitch right next to it, and we're going to do a half double crochet because now I want it to curve back down. So I'm going to yarn over, go into that stitch right after it, 3 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 3, I mean. Okay, so now you can see it's starting to curve back down. So I'm going to single crochet into the stitch next to that half double I just did. So here's my next stitch. We're going into it. Single crochet, we have 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the next 2. Okay, so now I'm going to do another little round. So this time I'm going to start off with a half double crochet. So yarn over, go into the next stitch, 3 loops, pull through all 3. So within that same one, I'm going to do a double crochet. So yarn over, go through the same stitch. We have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Okay, now move on to the next stitch after that. We're going to do 2 double crochets into the stitch. So that was 1. I'm going to do another one into the same stitch. Okay, now I want to go into the stitch after that, and I'm going to do a half double crochet into that stitch. So you can see this is the next stitch. We have 3 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 3. Now this time I'm going to slip stitch into the same stitch as that half double crochet. So I'm going into the same stitch, slip stitch, you just pull straight through. Okay, so next we have our last couple of stitches. Let's see, how much do we have left? 1, 2, 3, 4. So for the next one, I'm going to do a half double crochet into the next stitch. So we're working on a new little bump. 3 loops, yarn over it, pull through all 3. So now I'm going to go into the stitch after that and do 2 double crochets. So that was 1 and 2. Okay, so it's kind of curving a lot now. Okay, so next we have 2 stitches left. I'm going to do a, let's do a half double crochet into the next stitch. And then into our last one, let's do a slip stitch. So we're just going to go into that stitch, take some yarn, and pull it straight through. Now we have to work on the bottom of the cloud, and it's going to be a little bit difficult because, you know, there's not really any stitches you can go into. You can just find like these little openings here. So you can see they're really tiny. But what I'm going to do is, now that I have it turned over, I'm going to start off with a half double crochet into this open spot here. So I'm going to yarn over, go into this opening. We have 3 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 3. So I did mention that this is freehand, so we're gonna just try to make this work. And you know, when you see a lump on this side, a little curve, you want to make a curve on the other side as well. So that means when we do like a double crochet, that it'll make it longer. So now that I have this middle portion, I want to make it even to that. So I'm gonna do a double crochet into this next opening. Okay, now I'm gonna do another double crochet into that same stitch. Okay, so you can see we're now moving back into a little curving inward thing. So at this point, we want to make sure it goes back down. So we're just going to slip stitch into the next stitch. So let's see if I can show you that. So I see an opening here. So I'm just going to slip stitch to bring this back down. Now we're moving back to another little curve area. So you can see we have a curve on this side. So what do I want to do? We want to start off with a half double crochet this time, because if you go straight into a double, it wouldn't look right. It would go like too high. So you want to make it naturally curved. So we're going to start off with a half double into this corner here. Half double, going through all three. Okay, so now you can see we're going back to this middle section, which means we're working with a double. So double here, double on that side. So we want to do 2 double crochets into the middle stitch. So that was 1, and I'm going to do another one into that same stitch. Okay, so now I want to make this go back down, but because this lump is a little bit bigger, I think I'm going to do a half double and then a slip stitch. So you can see I'm only halfway and haven't reached the end yet, so why would I do a slip stitch right now? So I'm going to do a half double into this one here. If I can get it through. Okay, now I'm going to do my slip stitch into this corner piece. Oops. Slip stitch, there we go. Okay, so now we're back at our last little cloud section. So what I'm going to do is, let's do a half double to the beginning of the cloud. Okay, now we did this corner to corner. Now we're going to the middle, so it means we're going to do 2 doubles, 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So that was 1, and going into the second one, or the same one, to do it one more time. And now we have our last step is going to be a slip stitch into the first stitch. So you can see this stitch here. Just grab some yarn and pull it straight through. Now when you finish that, you can just cut off some excess piece of yarn. You need to cut off extra yarn because we're going to sew this onto the twiddle muff. So I'll just cut this much. And then to take this out, all you have to do is, similar to how we close off everything, you want to take the yarn and make it through the loop and tighten it up. Now, as you can see, this is a really skinny cloud. I make mine skinnier because I add stuff to my twiddle muff, but if you were to make this larger, you would have to single crochet an entire row from your chain, and I don't want to do that. I just make mine smaller because I don't mind the size of this. It kind of looks like a peanut, but this is one cloud, and this is what it would look like if you had the Bernat baby yarn. We've made it to the end of our part 1 twiddle muff tutorial. For this portion, you should have a base, a pom-pom border, and some clouds. Now I did crochet 4, but depending on how big your muff turned out to be, you can crochet more or less of these. So for part 2, we're going to be working on some more attachments. We will be making a sun, a tree, some apples, and a basket, also some grass. So if you're ready to keep crocheting, I'll see you in my next video.